Welcome to the latest installment of the Grindhouse Gutter. I'm Josh. I'm joined here with Donny
Hey,
and the Professor Smoak.
What's up?
If you're new to watching this, we are from the All American Spook Show podcast. We encourage you to go find the podcast wherever you listen to all your other favorite podcasts, and of course, we always try to upload them right here on the YouTube channel. So if you found this, then you found a lot of our past archives right here on the channel. So we encourage you to go check that out and all the other cool stuff we've got here. But the whole purpose of the Grindhouse Gutter is we kind of dive in deep into grindhouse movies, B movies, drive-in movies of days past. So and we do different genres. We have action, exploitation, horror, kung fu movies, and we've done a little bit of each one up to this point. So Smoke, I'll let you introduce what we're going to be talking about here today.
Yeah, I'm going to round out the four categories, as you mentioned: horror, kung fu, and exploitation, and action. That was the last one we had. Was 1990 Bronx Warriors. So the final one is exploitation, and I'm going to start it with one that might not be a crucial movie to the exploitation genre, and actually comes sort of at the tail end of the Grindhouse era, you might say, near the tail end of the 80s. Well, 1986 to be exact. That movie is 1986 Reform School Girls.
Nice.
Directed by Tom DeSimone. And, of course, as you can see on the cover, starring Wendy O. Williams, from iconic punk rocker from the Plasmatics, and she had a couple solo albums as well. There's Sybil Danning is in here, too. We'll talk about her a little bit here coming up. She's unfortunately kind of in a wasted role, really, in this movie, if you're used to her in other films. So
you wish I had killed you before I'm done.
But yeah, this movie is part of the subgenre known as women in prison movies. And really, it's kind of a send-up of those movies. Not necessarily a parody, because there's no specific movies it's parodying, but it's kind of taking a bunch of elements from different women in prison type movies and putting them together in a very campy, humorous sort of way.
I watched it again for this, but once I started watching it, I realized that I had definitely seen it before. I was kind of on the fence of whether I had before, but I had. Except I'm pretty sure when I saw it was edited.
This was the first time I had watched it.
Tom DeSimone, as I said, was the director, and he had done, prior to this, I know he did Hell Night. He also was uncredited. There was a split director credit for the movie Savage Streets. This movie, though, as I said, stars Wendy O. Williams. Also, Pat Ast as Edna.
It's quite a memorable role.
Yeah, she's probably the most memorable. Her lines and everything are probably the most memorable things in the movie, besides Wendy O. Williams too, herself. Pat Ast was from the sort of indie circuit, like Andy Warhol. She was in some Andy Warhol movies. It's supposed to be a reform school, yet all the women in here, for the most part, are like they're in their late 30s or something.
Yeah. It feels like they're all roughly around late 20s, early 30-year-old. They're all playing 16 in a reform school that's really like a prison.
Yeah, it is, and the warden, so to speak, well, not the main warden, but the Edna is sort of the I can't remember what her title necessarily is, but she's the one that has the most. She's over all the girls in the reform school, and she's the one that has the most interaction with them. As I mentioned, Sybil Danning is in here playing the main warden, who is unfortunately kind of wasted in this movie. She only has a couple of walk-on roles here or there, and I mean she does her thing, but she doesn't get to do what she normally does in these movies, and that's mainly because the producers, they hired Sybil Danning, and they wanted Sybil Danning to play the role of Edna, but Tom DeSimone was adamant about Pat Ast playing the role of Edna, and and all things being as they are, that was probably the best role for her for this type of a movie. I mean, for the way it was written, that role was written in a very campy sort of way that Pat Ast definitely delivers on that campiness. And you couldn't really have Sybil Danning really wouldn't have fit that role. I mean, she's playing a lot of women in prison movies and a lot of other exploitation movies where she is that queen bitch, so to speak, character, and she can do that job. But it's usually she's more serious at it than campy, So the role was definitely great the way it was written for Pat Ast. It's really not, it's not. This probably is. It's definitely not the best example of this particular subgenre. But I figured I'd go to this because, as we've done on the show with a couple of movies, Cannibal Holocaust would be the exception to this rule, but Five Fingers of Death is, if you've never watched a Hong Kong kung fu film from the 70s, you could do really well just popping in Five Fingers of Death and watching that and getting an introduction to it. 1990 The Bronx Warriors, again, if you haven't ever seen an Italian post-apocalyptic film, you might have seen Mad Max and Road Warrior, of course, and Escape from New York, but if you've never been introduced to the Italian subgenre of post-apocalyptic films, you couldn't do much better than starting with 1990 The Bronx Warriors. So I figured, if you want to dip your toes into the women in prison subgenre, and there, there's all kinds of directions it goes.
It is. There are some dark moments in the movie, but it is a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of comedy, intentional and unintentional. So it is a more palatable level of those type of movies for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't. Like I said, it's kind of a send up of those films, so it doesn't go into off the deep end, so to speak, with sex or violence. It's very kind of minimal when it comes to violence, and it's not that much gore, or even like a lot of the women in prison movies, you're going to be talking about like torture scenes and things of that nature, and a lot of them. This one is very mild when it comes to that. Nudity, you got mainly shower scenes, and when there's not shower scenes, there's girls just parading around the reform school in panties and bras and stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty about lingerie.
That's where the true exploitation elements come in, right?
Yeah. Also, speaking of that shower scene, there was a scene with Wendy O. Williams. She refused to not wear. She was nude in the scenes in the shower, but she had to wear her boots. That was one of the stipulations. She wouldn't be in there without the boots. Although I don't think they actually framed any of the shots where her boots are visible while she's in the shower, but for whatever reason, she decided not to. She wouldn't, would take her boots off while she was in the shower.
She didn't want to get athlete's foot.
Yeah, well, that's probably, that's probably a good thing to do. Also, her wardrobe is her own. They had wardrobe for her, but she refused to wear any of the shirts they had for her, and she just made her own, Yeah, because, she's like in true punk form, she Sharpied whatever slogan she wanted to be on the shirt. She just Sharpie it on there or whatever.
I like toward the end with her too, where she just goes full Mad Max, not to give too many spoilers away, but when the whole thing kind of breaks down and there's a little bit of a riot going on, she's just full on Thunderdome, man.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Basically, the only one that comes out in leather.
Yeah, she stands out. She's got a unique look.
Yeah.
Well, that whole persona. I don't know if y'all have ever seen any of her any YouTube videos or any kind of videos of her stage presence or persona with the Plasmatics band. That's basically you just took Wendy O. Williams from the Plasmatics and stuck her in this movie. She would chainsaw up. She would take a chainsaw and saw up guitars. She would have pyrotechnics on stage. She'd destroy these cars with sledgehammers on stage. She's jumping on top of them, smashing them up. So all these things she did in the movie were kind of stunts or whatever you want to call them, were her on, when she jumped over the fence, right, and landed on the other side of it and all this stuff. That's just kind of just the norm for her in her concerts. So yeah, to give a basic synopsis of it, you have Ginny, so she's sort of the, so to speak, good girl, even though she's she's driving the getaway car at the beginning of the movie, to where she ends up getting put in the reform school for that. Then when she's in there, she comes across all these characters, as we've already mentioned, such as Charlie, who's played by Wendy O. Williams, who is the big, the badass of the prison system. Also, then we mentioned Edna. She's I don't know what her title is, but she's the overseer or whatever you want to call it. Sort of, not the head warden, because that's Sybil Danning. Basically, it's just the girls being delinquent reform school girls, trying to at various points either escape or take showers, which they do all the time, right? I don't know how many different showers.
A lot of showers.
Yeah. So really, it's a bare bones plot line. It's to get from point A to point B, which is their interactions within the prison and the hierarchy between Jenny, between Charlie, between Edna, between Sybil Danning, like I said, which isn't in it all that much, but she is the main head warden. Of course, leading up to the big confrontation at the end between the girls in the reform school and the authority figures. But I would definitely recommend you check it out. As I said, it's a great place to sort of dip your toes into the pool if you haven't seen any women in prison movies before. So you could start here and then kind of branch out if you so desire.
All right, so what's the 0 to 10 Grindhouse gutter rating for this one?
As we talked about, it doesn't go overboard on either sex or violence. There's plenty of nudity with the shower scenes and things of that nature, but nothing really untoward in that. He wasn't trying to do that. And this director, by the way, I didn't mention before, had made at least two other women in prison movies. Going back to 1972, one was called Prison Girls, and then 1982, The Concrete Jungle. So he was already familiar with the genre. But apparently he wasn't happy with those movies. He wanted to do this type of movie, which was kind of sending up the genre, so to speak. It doesn't go overboard in any of those directions, but what it does have is it's very campy, very humorous.
Just a shit stain on the panties of life.
You should know you lick them every night.
It's got Wendy O. Williams, punk icon from the Plasmatics, Pat Ast. So it's got some exploitation factors that kind of boost that. It's going to boost that number up a little bit, but it doesn't hit. Like I said, these movies in the Grindhouse gutter and should be hitting on some of those, pushing some boundaries, so to speak. So, and this movie doesn't do that, but it is very entertaining. So the Grindhouse score for this one is going to be about. I'll give it a 6 on the Grindhouse meter. And that's because, it is fun, but like I said, it doesn't go overboard. It doesn't push those buttons that movies generally do when they're in the grindhouses and whatnot. I guess we'll go to the rating though. Beyond that, it's, as I mentioned, this thing it's fun, it's entertaining, it's very 80s. It's campy, doesn't take itself too seriously at all. Also, though, for those points, it kind of gets some deductions. You could dip into some of these other ones I mentioned, like Savage Island or Caged Heat and whatnot, and some quote unquote classics from the genre. You'll definitely laugh at it. Certainly at Pat Ast's character and some of the lines she comes up with. So I'll probably give it maybe we'll re-rate it if we ever get to doing this movie on the regular podcast. But at this point, I think I'm going to give it, haven't seen it now 3 times, I guess. Let's go with 2 3/4 X's. Almost triple X. Not really triple X. The movie's not triple X. Don't take that the wrong way.
All right, so there you go. That's the Grindhouse gutter rating, and that's how many X's that the professor gives out for reform school girls. Now, do you have any inclination as to what you're leaning towards for the next edition of Grindhouse Gutter?
Yep. Now at this point, now we've covered all 4 of our genres of Grindhouse films. So now it's just going to be up in the air. It's whatever. I'm not going to try and go through a cycle of, I'm not going to keep a pattern going here where it's going to be horror, kung fu, action, exploitation, whatever. So we're just going to mix it up a little bit. But I was going to do an Italian one, but I thought of one that'll be better since I've already done 2 of those. Let's go with a Spanish horror film. Tombs of the Blind Dead.
Okay, I have not seen that.
No.
Yeah,
this should be interesting.
Now, I should point out that I haven't seen it either, but I remember you covering on a previous library episode.
Tombs. The
Tombs
DVD box set. I think I did the box set or something like that. Actually, I got it right here. So that's a good prop for this.
Over in the east wing of the library, right behind me.
Well, this is the box set, but and I think I did this entire box set, I believe, for that, just kind of showing us, or maybe I just did the single one. But the first one in it is Tombs of the Blind Dead, and that's one I'll cover on the next episode.
There you go. And if you want to hear the deeper dive into that box set and the other things that we've talked about there on the Library of the Professor, all of those are in the archives over on our Patreon, patreon.com/spookshow. And that's always a cool thing that we do. It was every week. Now we've kind of stretched ourselves a little thin, so we're only doing those once a month now. But we still got lots of other cool stuff on our Patreon to kind of replace that, and putting out this and other stuff on our YouTube channel. So, and of course the main podcast every Monday at 6 p.m. East, wherever you get your favorite podcast. So we've got a lot going on in the Spook Show universe, and we encourage you to come back for the next edition of Grindhouse Gutter, where we'll be talking about Tombs of the Blind Dead. The first few episodes of Grindhouse Gutter right here on the YouTube channel, and we thank you for checking us out. Hopefully you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to be notified anytime we post up new episodes of this, to go live, anything that we do here, so you don't want to miss a thing. So for Will, who couldn't be with us, Donny, Professor Smoak, I'm Josh. We are from the All American Spook Show podcast, and we'll talk to you next time for the next Grindhouse Gutter.
Thank you.